Welcome to our kitchen. Today we're going to do lasagna.
Why lasagna, chef? I hate lasagna.
I hate lasagna.
Actually, I don't hate lasagna. I think the last 3 times I had lasagna, it was just terrible. It's like people aren't respecting lasagna anymore. It's like they turn it into this gruel of mince, overcooked pasta, gunks and gunks of greasy cheese.
Yeah, and I think that people are used to picking up the telephone and ordering lasagna, and it comes and they're happy kind of with that. Or they're going to the grocery store and they're picking up a frozen block of stuff and they throw it into the oven, and in an hour or however long it takes to make that, you get this gunk.
I think we should bring back this powerhouse because it's easy to serve, it's easy to prep. People forget how simple it is to make a lasagna.
So thanks to Charmaine for saying she wants to learn how to make lasagna, because that's what we do. Okay, so we made lasagna for you. So what we're doing now is we're going to show you all the steps that it takes to make something that looks like this. This is our lasagna. This is not what comes from the store. To get started with, we're just going to make a simple roux. And that's equal parts of butter and flour. So, and it's just, here's the good part of Wiehann.
I'm just
oh wait, this is the good part.
Melting the butter down a little bit without trying to let it split. So the milk solids and the oil, the actual ghee, I don't want that to split. So I'm taking it on a relatively medium temperature. The little bubbling that's forming is okay, but that's not really, it's not ideal what you want. So keep managing your heat, and if stir the butter so it doesn't split too quickly. Once my butter is down, I'm going to add, I'm making a blonde roux, by the way. A white roux, or
blonde, yeah.
Let's call it a white roux. Because you're making a bechamel, you want it to be off-white, like an eggshell white. You don't want it to be, you want to create contrast when you're making your lasagna, and you're layering your lasagna to have that white contrast against the brownness of the beef and the red from the sauce and the sort of yellowiness from the cheese and the parmesan. So I'm happy with what I've got there now. So now I'll just add in the flour.
Kind of slow though, huh?
I'm adding it a lot slowly because I don't want too many lumps to form, but you can add it all at once and then beat out the lumps if you like. But
that's just a lot more work than what you really have to do.
Exactly. So
just go a little bit slow, and just takes an extra, I don't know, 10-15 seconds to just go slow.
It really does, and you're getting a better result.
It's just very nice and smooth already.
Yeah. It's going to get nice, and it's going to go paste. So it's going to make a real paste. So that is exactly where it's going to be very delicate on the heat, because that heat will just color your roux to an undesired color. You're going to get a brown color, and your end result's going to be very dark. So at this point, I'm incorporating the flour off the heat, and as you can see, the butter is hot enough to still soak up that flour and not give us an undesirable color, because we're going to add herbs in this specific recipe, and herbs tend to bleed, so you don't want your roux to be green either. So your bechamel, I mean, because the roux is the flour and butter mix, and once you add the cream and the milk, the normal thing to do is to add milk, but you can add a double cream to add a little bit of depth or layer to your flavors, and some people consider that to be cheating.
Yeah, but we're going to do both.
Sure.
Because cheating's okay sometimes.
So, see, we already have a nice, it almost resembles like a pâte de choux,
Yeah.
which is basically the starter. If you want to make a pâte de choux, it's in a coming video. We'll just add eggs to that, and you incorporate your eggs slowly, and you can make churros, you can make donuts, things like that. Right, so Chef David, are you happy with the consistency of
that's
that?
good. Give it just a little heat to
Yeah, just to get it shiny.
yeah, just to get it shiny, and all that does is cooks the starch just a little bit so it doesn't taste pasty. And that's just gonna take, I don't know, maybe 30 seconds, maybe not even that long.
If you're used to doing this, you can do it on a high heat and manage the heat as you go along.
Sure, just by lifting the pan on.
Exactly, but it takes a little bit of practice, so don't try it at home.
The easy way.
Some people and some Italian chefs, but all of them have their own little quirks and their own little tips, but they will add a little bit of chicken stock or vegetable stock into their bechamel. Again, just to get a flavor. Chef, when do you normally flavor your bechamel? Do you do it after you've done your roux?
After, yeah, everything's already done, and then I flavor it.
Okay.
Okay, so now you can see seriously that things have changed. Okay, and the color is exactly where we want it. So I think it's about time to stop, don't you?
Right.
Now it's time to just throw the milk in, and instantly we're going to have bechamel, because the milk is just going to combine with the flour. The fat that we put in is our flavor, and it's also our binder.
Ideally, this would be done with a whisk.
Yeah,
But in my kitchen, apparently.
not today. No big deal.
Right, so as you can see, I'm bringing down the temperature all the way from a high down to about a medium. So this is just to incorporate the cream. Then I'm going to up the temperature to get a slight boil out of it. And then you'll see once your sauce goes from sort of a matte color, so now you can see it's kind of matte, it'll get the shiny feel, and that's when you know that starches.
Yeah, the starch is, the liquid has been absorbed by the starch, and away you go. Now you have a sauce. And this sauce is bechamel.
And this sauce will thicken up very quickly. You cannot take
You
your
can't
eyes
walk away
off
from
this. You cannot walk away from it because it'll go very thick and very stodgy very quickly. So we warmed up the milk, and that helps it to get to temperature a little bit. Do not add cold milk. You're not doing yourself any favors. You're not doing the recipe any
You'll end up
favors.
with little roux balls.
Yes.
And then you're going to have to strain the roux balls back out of your sauce. Okay, now the finishing touches are going on to this bechamel. Doesn't need to be real thick.
It'll thicken up more once it gets to a bit of heat now. So I've taken the heat off a lot in order to save that color of ours. We really want as white as possible. Nice and smooth, no lumps. Already coming to a nice thick consistency, almost like a custard.
They call that consistency nappe, right?
Nappe.
Nappe.
Oui, chef.
See, it's perfect.
And the way you taste nappe,
Now what we've done is, since the meat is totally browned, or totally cooked, we just put a little bit of garlic and a little bit of flour in. That flour is going to be our friend. It needs to soak up whatever additional cooking juice we had, and it's going to help us during final assembly to keep us from having little pools of anything left over.
grease in the edges and sauce just pooling in the corners and on top of the cheese when you're trying to get it baked and get a nice color on it. So the flour definitely is an essential in there. Some people also do like a bit of a sort of milk and white bread solution that also cakes up, but that turns your meat typically into a bloody meatloaf.
Yeah.
And you don't want that for for the meat solution. You don't want a meatloaf.
All right, now the third component. This is the tomato sauce. So, chef has already put in some olive oil in the pan. Now, another half of an onion goes in.
So notice I didn't clean the pan after the sauce because we want this to go into the sauce. We want
that fun.
Everything that you assemble separately, you never clean your pans during this because you're losing all the flavor. You're losing all that seasoning that you've done. So if you do that, you're going to end up with something that's really bland and has no depth of flavor.
One of the things that often you'll hear from professional chefs is they're trying to create layers of flavor. And that's how you get these layers of flavor, is by creating fond on the bottom of a pan and then scraping it through.
Don't be scared to let it burn a little bit.
No,
You in fact get your ingredients all over that because that's going to season it up. And what also is going to happen is then you will take typically an alcohol of some kind, but you can also use something like lemon juice or vinegar. But when you use lemon juice or vinegar, be absolutely careful because you could end up making your entire dish sour.
Sure.
Color on there.
In goes some olives.
So you can use black olives or Kalamata olives for this as well. But we are assembling essentially a chicken and beef lasagna. So let's keep the colors fresh.
That's going to give it a little bit of acidity, and I think that we're probably going to that'll match really well with the tomatoes.
And the flavor
Yep.
is great. So see how the liquids from the olives that I've added has already deglazed the pan for us. So now we've got nice free reign to really let that onion juice sweat out and create a little bit more flavor on the bottom for us. So we're back to the saute, and what you might think, oh my god, I've burned my sauce. No, you have not. You've just added extra possibility for layering flavor. And this is what I want to show you with in terms of using an alcohol to deglaze your pan. So just before you're going to add your tomato sauce, you want all of that flavors because you want that to go into your tomato sauce. Don't add your tomato sauce, then try to reduce it and then try to add your red wine. There's not going to be enough time to really cook off that alcohol flavor. So this is where you do it. So get a good amount in your pan, cover the whole pan and let it simmer. Now that simmer is going to loosen up every bit of those nice flavors for you. So once you gave it that initial shock, take it off and just let the wine do its job. See how it's cleaning out your pan already? Included with the acidities from the olives and from the onions, all of these work together to deglaze your pan, to get all that flavor back into your sauce.
And now the alcohol's coming.
You cannot smell it anymore, and see, it's not even like there's red wine anymore. Be a little bit of patience with this. Don't think it's going to just instant wipe your pan. It's going to take a little bit of grease, elbow grease. But see how clean that pan is coming now. And that's the difference between a chef cooking and a home cook. You probably have to soak your pans for 3 days to get them clean afterwards. I can almost put my pans back into the cupboard when I'm done cooking. Yeah, slight bit of alcohol flavor still coming on from it, but that's going to cook off once you add your sauce, your tomato sauce in there. And tomato sauce, the longer it goes, the more time you have, the longer you can cook it, the better it's going to taste.
Now the everything has been deglazed, and you just dumped in a can and a half of chopped tomatoes.
Yep.
And now it's just time to let it go, right?
Let it go, and the longer it cooks, the better. Like I said, you can put this on and forget about it for 6 hours. As long as you just mind the reduction. You typically want to cover it then. You don't want it to reduce too much, but put it on a slow simmer. Typically I'll get it up to a boil first. So So right now it's just a low roll. So I'll get it up to quite a good bubble. And then turn my heat all the way down to a medium-low temperature. See that it's simmering only slightly and not boiling. And cover and go.
This is probably going to reduce by 50%, right?
At least. If you'd like, and you have the time and you want to sit and nurse this for 6 to 8 hours, just keep some vegetable stock handy and some tomato paste. So you'll add your tomato paste into your vegetable stock and then top it up if you think it's reducing too far. And be careful, it's tomatoes and olives. They will get salty if you leave them too long.
We've been cooking for just a little bit of time, and now it's time to throw some mushrooms in. It's not an essential ingredient, but it adds to the umami of this whole recipe. So I like to use these little gnocchis, and just right in they go.
Layering the flavor, right, Chef?
Yeah, layering the flavor. From a chef point of view, we like to use mushrooms as much as we can because, again, it's that secret. It's one of those secret things that happens with your flavor, with your palate. When the mushroom hits your palate, it fools you into thinking that there's a lot more meaty goodness happening than there really is.
That is true.
And that's called umami, Japanese.
Which is also basically monosodium glutamate.
Same thing.
And everybody thinks that's a big taboo, but it is absolutely not. It is purely just glutamate that's been attached to a sodium molecule in order for it to be able to spread it into your food or to carry it into food. So having too much salt, you'd have less of a health effect from having too much MSG than you would have from having too much salt.
It got a bad rap from some of these takeout Chinese places. They would start dumping MSG in to boost their flavor so that they didn't have to have nearly as much meat. And they kind of overdid it and unfortunately got a whole lot of bad press because of that.
Some people got sick.
Yep. But the truth of the matter is MSG it's a natural ingredient that we like to use a lot if we can.
It occurs naturally in tomatoes and it occurs naturally in Parmesan cheese, for instance.
True. We're using both of those today, aren't we?
Absolutely.
And we're not adding any MSG. It's just naturally occurring.
It's already there.
It's already there.
So, just a quick guide on cutting fresh herbs. It's got incredible amounts of flavor and juice in there compared to something that's dry like that. I mean, there's nothing left in there, but you can destroy it as well if you don't cut it right. So, I know this seems very
Anal.
This
is YouTube. We can say that.
So what I tend to do, and I take a little bit of extra time doing this because it just helps it out in the end. So I take my basil leaves, for instance, and I layer them on top of each other. It doesn't have to be very particular, but get a nice little layer on it, right? And then give it a fold, just a little, so you have something like that, a little parcel like that, right? Then when you cut, so don't try and mince it, don't go nuts. Give it a clean cut all the way through, and that's it.
So it's time to start grating some cheese.
I get a little bit of the crust in it as well.
Yeah. I think that it's easy enough to buy it in the bag, but
you want the fresh stuff.
Yeah, if you can get the fresh stuff, you don't pay any more for it. If you've got a box grater, you've got 4 different sides on there that you can make exactly the size that you want, and you end up with something that's just beautiful like this.
A couple of hours in, and you can see the sauce has almost gone to a bit of a paste now. We want that. Means that the flavors that we had in there before is absolutely concentrated right now. So we're going to loosen it up a little bit because we finish it with a little bit of Parmesan cream, and this is where we add our fresh herbs into it. So again, we're adding the fresh herbs now because we don't want them to go brown and we don't want them to turn the sauce brown, because we've got a beautiful rich red color going here. Maybe you can't see it as well because of the copper pan, but it's a pretty one. So I'm going to start off by adding just a sprinkle, just cover what you've got with a bit of the Parmesan cheese. You don't want to overdo this because Parmesan is quite strong, right? So that's it. But that is going to make it even more stodgy. Okay, so get that cheese in there to melt it, and you'll see what that does to it. Turns it into a bit of a pasty paste. Right, see how nice and clean our pan comes off. No burnt edges, nothing. Okay, now spread it out a little bit, and then take a vegetable stock and just refresh your sauce so it's a nice liquid sauce. All right, do not add water. You're just going to dilute all of that beautiful flavor you've been developing over the last couple of hours. Okay.
It's really very easy to make vegetable stock, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
You've got any kind of vegetables that, other than capsicum, whatever you've got that it's either going bad or you bought a little bit too much, just throw it into a liter of water, bring it to a boil for, what, 30 minutes?
Yeah.
And you've got vegetable stock.
You don't want color, you can see how it's just kind of murky. But it's packed with flavor and packed with aromas. Because typically what you do want to add to your vegetable stock is a bouquet garni, which would be rosemary, thyme, a bay leaf, peppercorn, and wrap it up into a little sachet and let it hang out in the brine or in the soup, and just let it sit there and get flavor. So another thing that is popular that people add to the marinara sauces, but not really for a lasagna, are capers.
Sure.
And capers, you could make a really nice puttanesca and these kind of things. Okay, so I've got enough heat there. Our sauce is loose enough to be spread. It's a beautiful deep red color with those little mushrooms peeking out. So I'm taking it off the heat. I'm switching off the heat now. We are basically done with our elements assembly. And now my fresh herbs are going to go in. Now be very careful with the fresh herbs. If you add too much, they do impart immense amounts of flavor, especially if they sit for a long time. And again, as I said, I'm adding them now. Look how nice that bright green is just contrasting the red. And the longer that cooks, the more flavor it imparts.
Now it's just been rinse and repeat and rinse and repeat. Now there's, if you look at the layers, it's all one right after the other, 3 different layers. Now on the top, there's just a little bit of that remaining meat. Then it's time for some herbage. So I think that it's important that the herbage goes down first before the cheese, otherwise it's just going to burn. Right, and you're just going to end up with blackness.
And bitter.
Yeah, and bitter.
The burn is not that big of an issue for me. It's kind of like gives you
ruined it.
Sometimes like a texture added, but it's just not going to taste good.
Okay, so mozzarella goes on first.
And again, don't go crazy with the mozzarella. You don't want something that's so just gummy and stodgy. You've created all of these layers, and it gets. People tend to overkill the mozzarella.
It's not pizza, right?
No. You kind of have to see your pasta dish through this mozzarella, because 180 is not a high temperature to cook a pasta. It'll take a little bit of time, so you have some time. If you're worried, cover with some tin foil for the first, I'd say, 20 minutes, and then just finish it off under the broiler to get the color on the top. See, don't go nuts. The mozzarella is not the feature of this dish. The mozzarella, in traditional lasagnas, they don't even put mozzarella on it.
It's all Parmesan.
Exactly.
But we're not going to forget about the Parmesan either.
Absolutely not. So I like to finish it with Parmesan. So I'll get it into the cook now. And then the last, I would say 5 minutes, When I'm getting my browning, then I sprinkle the Parmesan on. What do you think, Chef?
I think that's a perfect idea.
Okay. So, with this dry pasta, what I know, I have a little edge peeking out there. So I'm going to leave that to show you what happens to that if you don't cover it properly with anything. Especially with these kind of pastas, but very much with the fresh pasta as well. That will become crunchy, crumbly, it's horrible, it'll break your teeth if you try and bite into it. So make sure that your entire lasagna and your entire pasta is covered with something that's going to rehydrate it.
Okay.
Now I clean up the edges a little bit before it goes in, because whatever seeps over and hangs over will cook pitch black, making your pasta bitter and making it a hell of a thing to clean after. But this is our assembly. From here we go into 180 degrees for 30 to 35 minutes. But at your discretion, depending on your brand of oven or the temperature that you start at. It's not a sloppy mess.
It's not a sloppy.
The cheese has got nice crust on the top. We've got our basil inside. It hasn't turned it brown. It hasn't bled out and made the bechamel green.
We got GBD, golden brown delicious.
Of course.
I think maybe we have a success here. Let's find out.
Let's see if we maintained our layers.
Now, we rested this, right? This came out of the oven
About
maybe half
15
an hour.
minutes ago.
Yeah, 15 minutes ago. We rested. I think what do you think? In an ideal world, people probably should cook it and then chill it and then reheat it the next day?
I reckon you can do that. It's still best just to let it rest and eat it fresh. But it's like a lot of casseroles. The longer it sits, the more the flavors infuse, the better it gets. You run the risk of overcooked pasta. That's the only thing that might be the problem. So you don't want to keep it chilled for a long time.
The mystery is, did we succeed?
I would take it out, cool it down, and then freeze it directly if you're going to eat it later.
There you go.
Then you have a ready meal. If you're single or you're a young couple, you can have something that's quite intricate to make, quite complicated to assemble, and have it ready in 20 to 30 minutes. Let's have a look, see if we maintained our layers. So get in nice and deep. Pull it out, and we have layers.
I think
it's not a sloppy mess.
We might have succeeded.
It stays together very well, except for that piece that came out. But as you'll see in our assembly, we had to play a bit of Tetris. And look at the casserole itself. So that is a clean cut. We still see our ricotta cheese. We still see our ingredients. Our different ingredients are in there.
So here's the thing. I think that when we're talking about the layers in this pasta, when we were putting this together, we said we don't want goop. We don't want things sliding around. And I think we succeeded in that.
We also didn't want dry.
We don't want
that. Could have been a possibility for us as well.
That's another possibility.
I think
we don't have that problem. Okay. I think we have success.
Let's dig in.
This was your idea, right?
Yes.
So, what do you think?
I think it's very affordable and it's good. And it's so delicious.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That is fantastic. Taking a little bit of extra time to cook that sauce, that tomato sauce, having various elements in it, like the enoki mushrooms, like the olives, really taking care not to over-season each layer. The bechamel is not over-seasoned, the sauce is not over-seasoned. The sausage is quite highly seasoned, but combined with that chicken mince, everything comes together and you can get distinct flavors out of it. It's not just a messy tomato mozzarella flavor. There's herbs, there's mushroom, there's sausage, and there's cheese. All comes together the way lasagna should.
So the takeaway is good cooking doesn't have to be hard. Good cooking doesn't have to be come from a famous restaurant. It can come from your house.
Agreed.